Take a moment to think back to how it was that your parents or caregivers had raised you. Alternatively, if you have children of your own, how was it that you raised them? What methods, principles, or standards are involved in these relationships? Do you think that this way of parenting is the best way? Do you think it's the worst? There may not exactly be a right or wrong way to parent, but there are certain classified styles of parenting that have data to back up their effectiveness or ineffectiveness. Of these 4 parenting styles, for me, 3 of them do not meet all desired outcomes for child development. First is authoritarian. Authoritarian is a strict style of parenting. It involves the child being expected to behave any rules or guidelines set forth by parents with no input of their own, no word or response to how they feel about these guides or these rules, and it's all determined by the parent on how they make their decisions. Alternatively, on the inverse of that, we have permissive, or I've heard it labeled as free-range parenting. This style of parenting doesn't set limits for children, and they believe that the child knows within their true nature what's the best way for them to be living. This is very contrary to authoritarian parenting, where the parents are dictating the child's decisions. Here, the child makes up their own decisions. And then we have neglectful or uninvolved, not quite absentee parenting, because that wouldn't be parenting. So for neglectful or uninvolved, children have quite a bit of freedom. Their basic needs are met, but they don't have much of a relationship with their parent or a parent or caregiver. They are uninvolved personally and absent-minded from the child's life, and there isn't much of a relationship between the two. For me, I believe authoritative parenting is the best of the 4 options. It takes a little of all the 3 things, all the 3 styles, without leaning too far into one or the other. For the stricter side, you do have clear set guidelines for children, where the parents make what they feel is the best decisions for the children, but they also give the children more freedom in how those guidelines are met. They let them make their own decisions. That way they aren't reliantly dependent on anybody. And that's the same on the permissive side when it comes to authoritative parenting. They give children a certain level of independence. It's not a complete isolation between them and the child, but enough to where they can take care of themselves and they can grow in those aspects with themselves without being overly reliant on a parent or caregiver. In conclusion, parenting isn't always so clear-cut, black and white. Even those parents that are raising their children modeled after the authoritative parenting, they still struggle and they make mistakes. There is no perfect parenting, only parenting that is proven best for you and your family. Take a moment and think back to how it was that your parents or caregivers had raised you. Alternatively, if you had a child of your own, I want you to take a moment and think back to how it was that your parents or guardians raised you. Alternatively, if you have children of your own, how is it that you raised them? What methods, principles, or standards were involved in these 2 relationships? Do you think that this way of parenting was the best way, or do you think it's the worst? There may not exactly be a right or wrong way to parent, but there are for certain classified styles of parenting that have data to back up their effectiveness or ineffectiveness. Of these 4 parenting styles, for me, 3 of them do not meet all of the desired outcomes for child development. The first is authoritarian. Authoritarian is a very strict style of parenting. The children is expected to behave and obey certain rules and guidelines given by the parent with no input, say-so, or expressed opinions or emotions of themselves against these. They must be obedient to the parent because the parent knows best. On the opposite side of that, we have permissive. And with permissive, there are no guidelines like this. I have heard this chalked as free-range parenting, which, again, like authoritarian, there are benefits, but there are major cons as well. With no rules or directions given to the child, they have no boundaries to stay within, and that doesn't end up well for them developmentally because they have no boundaries and they have no respect for boundaries, or are less likely to. It predisposes them to not being able to listen and take orders more so than it would for a child raised through the authoritarian perspective. Now, off to that, we have the third parenting style of the 4 would be neglectful or uninvolved. Now, this is different from absent parenting because if it was absent parenting, that would imply that there isn't any actually parenting being done. With neglectful or uninvolved parenting, children are given quite a bit of freedom, not as much as the free-range children, but they have their basic needs met, but they don't have much of an actual relationship between themselves and the parent. The parent is uninvolved personally with the child, or they may be absent emotionally, mentally from the child, not supporting those aspects of the child's life. For me, I believe that authoritative parenting is the best option regarding the outcome of the child's development in response to any of these specific parenting style choices. It has a combination of the 3 different types, but not leaning so far into any one of the 3 that it becomes more of a con to have that style of parenting being what you're giving to your children. There is a lot of peer-reviewed research on all 4 of these parenting styles. For our authoritative parenting, there are some studies that have proven that children that are parented by this style are less likely to have more health concerns, including obesity, as well as how well they perform in schools, as opposed to if they had been a child raised under the other 3 parenting styles. And then personally, I try to keep a very straight, authoritative parenting style with my own child. She is 4, she's in pre-K. My wife and I try very hard to not fall too far into any of the other 3 categories. We try to make sure that we set clear rules and boundaries for our child, but we also let her express her qualms with those. If she doesn't like certain things, then we ask her why. We don't just invalidate her opinion. We also give her some freedom. We let her have her own dedicated playtime to do what she will. We just require that she also obey some of the rules that we put forth in order to do stuff like that. I think it's worked out pretty well. I would be lying though if I said that there aren't certain things that we do that we shouldn't do, but I mean that is any parent really, and I think a lot of that has to fall on how you were raised as a child. I often catch myself saying, well, I'm the parent, and this is why this should be done this way, or this is why you need to do this, which is true, but that's not what you should tell the child. That's not a very good response for them. It's not going to make them want to listen anymore just because you're saying that you are the parent that they have to. It's really good to take their emotions into account as well. In conclusion, parenting isn't always so clear-cut and black and white. And even those parents raising their children modeled more after the authoritative parenting style, they still struggle and make mistakes, like my wife and I. There is no perfect parenting. There's just only parenting that's proven best for you and your family.